My name is Devon Jones, and I am a professional problem solver, which I figured out by accident, and that will make sense as I continue to tell my story, which starts when I was in high school. I didn't fit in, I didn't have a lot of friends, and the people who did allow me to spend time with them were people I shouldn't have been spending time with to begin with. I had, I was bullied a lot, and I had a hard time with the whole mental health thing, and my parents didn't know how to fix that, and so we spent a great deal of time kind of going back and forth through the whole doctors and drugs and self-medicating, and I found a lot of solace in music, and my dad fortunately recognized that very early and decided to invest in me. And it was, I think, around my 14th birthday that my dad bought me a guitar package. And from that point forward, I made it my mission to be a musician professionally, which has not yet happened. Being a musician doesn't pay the bills yet, but it's still on the radar. But that's for later down the line in the story here. So as I was going through high school, my struggle with mental health and depression and anxiety led me in and out of doctor's offices, a number of different drugs and things, both from the pharmaceutical industry and through the form of self-medication. And both of those did not serve me in any way. And so it all came to a head when in a family meeting after another big fight that we all had, my father posed a question to me. Do you want to stay here, get your shit together, get your diploma, go to college and follow that path, or are you done here and do you want to move on? And so I made a very quick decision to say, yeah, I'm getting the heck out of here. And so I dropped out of high school and I went on to enroll in the University of Hard Knocks. I take that very seriously because when my family and I recently sat down to kind of explore that part of my history, it turns out, after listing all of the different jobs I had before I landed on the thing that actually worked for me, I had 38 different jobs. And so the first of that was Mr. Lube, where I learned one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn. I worked there for 9 months, and in that 9-month tenure, I had it in my head that I was going to race to the top. I was going to become a supervisor and eventually a manager of that location. And so I thought that if I worked hard and I kept my station clean and I tried to learn all the things that happen in this business, that the person in charge was going to notice me and reward me for that hard work. And at about the 8th month mark, we hired somebody new into the team. His name was Richard. And if you're watching this, thank you for this really incredible lesson. Although at the time, I didn't really like you much. What happened was he got hired on, and in the span of that next month, had schmoozed the guy, the manager, and played the social game way better than I did. And when the supervisor role came up for grabs, he ended up getting the role before I did. And he did it in 30 days, and I didn't do it. I didn't get the role. And that was the harsh reality, that it didn't matter what you knew and how hard you worked, that you weren't going to be rewarded on that merit. It was quite literally who you know and how good you were at socializing. And so that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. But it did change the way that I saw things and the way that I interacted with people. And at first I was jaded. I was very angry and hateful, and I wrote this 2-page long letter to the manager and handed it to him on the day that I decided I was quitting. And I remember that it was very moving for me because after reading that letter, he broke down in tears and didn't realize what had happened, just because he wasn't seeing things from that same lens. And so he told me that he deeply regretted that I was leaving and wished that things were different. And in hindsight, all lessons are 2020. But from that point on, I went and I tried a whole bunch of other jobs. And while I was doing that, I was kind of working a double shift. And the double shift was me and my brother decided to launch a record label. And so the story behind launching the record label was that at the time he was working at Petland, and I can't remember which of the 38 jobs I had, but he found this movie that came out, I can't remember when, I think it's around 2006 or 2007. The movie was called Hustle and Flow. And in this movie, a young man takes on the task of becoming a rapper and makes a demo tape and then pitches it. And I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but the whole thing seemed like it was a very attainable thing that anybody could just do this thing. And being young and naive, me and my brother set out to take on that task. He knew that I was really into music because I'd still been playing. I'd been in a bunch of bands and stuff, and just nothing was really working out for me. And he said, why don't we try our hand at this hip hop thing? And so we did. And he took his paycheck and bought this keyboard, and we started fiddling around with it, and then quickly learned that if we were going to take what we were doing on the keyboard and turn it into a demo tape, we would have to record it. And so me, him, and a close friend of ours at the time went down to the mall, and we started just grifting, just asking people for change. And we gave them the whole pitch. Hey, we're trying to be, this aspiring musician, and we need a microphone, and anything would help. And eventually we got $28 and whatever it was, 36 cents or something like that. We went down to Radio Shack, back when Radio Shack was actually a thing. And we bought an auxiliary microphone, one that you could just plug into any auxiliary hole on a computer. We put the mic on top of the keyboard, and we played the keys into the microphone and recorded it on a program that we stole off of LimeWire. That thankfully that program is no longer around, so I'm okay saying that we took it. But we got our hands on this program and started recording things, and it was terrible. It was horrible, but it was enough that it inspired my father to give us $1,000, and we took the $1,000 and we bought a microphone and a couple other things, and we outfitted a little closet studio with some blankets and really started taking it seriously. And so that was the double shift. All of that was happening in the background of me trying all of these different jobs. It was in marketing and merchandising, and I worked as a laborer, and I stripped forms, and there's just so many different things. And I very quickly learned that I don't want to do anything that is like a crazy level of physical labor. I wanted to use my mind, and I took a fancy to photography. My dad and I were out at doing some garage sailing, and we found a box of all this really old film camera gear, and for $50 bought the whole box, and I started shooting some photography, and I loved doing it. But the problem was that the market is saturated. Anybody could buy a camera and take pictures, and so doing wedding photography or doing headshots and all that kind of stuff just wasn't something that I was really into. But I was into architectural photography. I love taking pictures of architecture and things like that. And in chatting with my dad, there was a crossover there. Real estate agents were just transitioning into the internet, where they were listing properties and they needed photos, and I could take photos. So we started pitching it to the real estate agents, which eventually turned into virtual tours and measuring and all this other stuff. And over a 12-year period, me and my dad built this business from the ground up, shooting photography for real estate agents. That happened right around the time I was working for Kinko's as a graphic designer. I'd been there for, I think, 11 or 12 months, and we had been planning all this stuff, and my dad basically said, listen, I've been doing a couple of shoots, and I think we got enough here that you can quit your job and kind of go full-time into it. And so that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey into figuring out how to solve problems. Now, keep in mind, while all of this is happening, I'm working the night shift on doing this music, doing this recording and things. And the problem that I found very quickly was that to record music, you had to have some money to pay a studio to be able to record it. So we had to figure out how to record, and then we took the microphone that my dad helped us invest in the studio, and we were doing this recording. We were getting better at it. And we got so good at it that other people in the community, just the local hip hop scene, well, they wanted to get in on it. And so, just through being out there, we had some people come in, we started recording and charging for the recording. And then eventually we figured out that we needed music videos. And so we went and bought a camera, or I used the camera that I was using for the photography business, but eventually we upgraded and we started shooting music videos because music videos are very expensive. And then we had to figure out how to do marketing and how to build a brand and how to build websites. And so this became a common theme for me was, I don't know what I'm doing. I have absolutely no idea how to run a label or start a business or any of these other things, but I was figuring it out as I was going. And eventually, the label turned into this thing that we did called Beat of the Week. We would invite a bunch of local rappers into the studio. We would show them some beats. We would randomly pick one. And then everybody there got an hour to write out their verse that they would put on the song. And we would compete on live with Instagram and Facebook, and people would watch us, rapping our verses out, and they would pick their favorite in the comments, which eventually turned into like this rating system I built on a website. And then from there, we would take the top 3 guys, put them on the song, make a little hook, put that song out. And then we did this every week, and we did it for 4 seasons. And it became kind of like a main thing here in Calgary for the... Sorry, ignore that part. It became a main thing in Calgary, just a part of the culture, a part of the community. And eventually the workload just got so much, it was about 30 or 40 hours a week. It was about 30 or 40 hours a week that we were spending on producing this stuff, because every week we had to capture it on video, we had to make some video stuff, we had to edit it, we had to get photos, we had to do the music, but we systemized it and we made it work up until the point where it just became overwhelming with juggling that and the label and all this other stuff. And we were broke and, just never really had any traction. The rubber really never met the road, and we never really made it big. But along the way, I had been practicing and mastering all of these transferable skills in taking the intangible, like a musician's identity, and turning it into a brand, and systemizing how to take that musician's brand and turn it into something that you could put out there in the world, and leveraging that to help them build their fan base. And this was all happening around the same time that we could sell CDs out of a trunk and make money. But Napster and LimeWire and music streaming and Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of derailed that. And so we had to figure out how to do all of this other stuff. And so I took a bunch of online courses and started learning on my own how to do marketing, how to structure a business, how to build things. And eventually, this is around 2019, I decided I was done with the photography thing and I wanted to move on and kind of go out on my own and try to take on the challenge of being an entrepreneur by myself. Because at this point I had a lot of help. I had my dad. I had my dad kind of supporting me and kind of showing me the ropes and guiding me through all of this stuff, which I am so fortunate to have had. But I be under my dad's umbrella forever. And so around 2019, I decided I was going to go out on my own and figure it out. And this was all around the same time. I had, over the course of about 5 years before this happened, I had met this girl, fell madly in love with her, and we got married, and then we had a kid, and the magic kind of died, and we ended up getting divorced, and that's a different story. But in the middle of all of that, she was an artist and really wanted to pursue doing tattooing. But if you're familiar with the world of tattoo artists, it's a very political space. There's a lot of unwritten rules, and the culture is very rigid in terms of what you can and can't do and how you're supposed to come up in that. And none of it really resonated with her, and it made it very difficult for her to kind of enter into the space. And I said, you know what? I'm taking all these courses on how to market music. I wonder if what I'm learning here would apply here, and we could start up a tattoo studio for you. So we renovated a bedroom in our house and had the city come in and do all the the legal stuff and approvals, and Eventually, they gave us the green light and said we could do it. So I started running an ad campaign for her on on a $10 a day budget. And, believe it or not, in the first 2 weeks, we booked her out for 6 months and we had to shut the ad campaign off. And I was like, I'm onto something here. I think I can do this a little bit more professionally for other businesses. Fast forward a little bit, we split up, we ended up getting divorced, and that moment in my life was a rock bottom place because I didn't have anything. I didn't have a job, I didn't have any income, I had my son to take care of, and now I didn't have a wife, and I had to figure it all out. Again, I had to pick up all the pieces and put a life together from nothing. And so I had this looming fear that I was going to screw it all up and somebody was going to come in from child services and take my son away from me. And so I had this underlying fear and motivation and urgency that pushed me into this space. I think more so than most other people. This was one of those situations where, hey, I wish I had the option to burn the boats. I didn't have the option. The boats just caught fire and I had no choice. So I had to figure it out now that I was kind of stuck in this place. So that was around the 2019 part of my life. And I decided to launch a podcast. I was going to take all this stuff that I learned from Beat of the Week and from doing music videos and audio engineering, and I was going to apply it to doing a podcast. And so I launched my first podcast, and I started reaching out to people in my network to do interviews. And one of the people that I reached out to, his name was Parnell Ramlal, and we had a really great interview. It lasted 2 hours long, and it was the best interview I'd had out of all the people I've ever talked to. And then when we got to the end, we started chatting about, hey, he also had a podcast. What would it look like if we were to partner up and kind of like do this as a media company of some kind? And that was the birth of Seven Tree Media. So we pitched this idea to a couple of small local businesses. Shout out Steven Vetter at House of Cars. He decided he was our first client. We took him on and we produced this podcast. It ended up being only about a dozen episodes before the marketing department decided that it wasn't a frugal use of funds, and they were going to try some other things, and so they let us go, which was a very disheartening, rise to the top as we thought it was, and then a crash and burn on the other side. And this became the common theme of how my business was. It was we would take on a client, we would do all this work, and then the client would leave, and it just wasn't happy, and so we were stumbling through it, and he couldn't sustain that roller coaster, both probably mentally and monetarily. And this was where the real test of who you are as a person came out for me. So many times of trying to get a client and then pay the bills and not being able to pay the bills and coming up short and having to borrow money from friends and family, mostly my dad. It was a very difficult period in my life where I had to wrestle with this idea of like, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe this is something that's reserved for a special kind of person, because I just don't think I have it in me. And I can't tell you the number of nights that, just pounding your head against the desk trying to figure out like, why is none of this working? And it worked so well before. And like, what am I doing wrong? And that was the ups and downs of it. And then 3 years into it, something clicked for me. And this was a stark reminder to the first lesson that I learned back at Mr. Lube. And it's not what you know, because I knew a lot and nobody was listening to me. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And so this forced me to get better at my social game. And it forced me to get better at asking questions, and it forced me to get better at meeting people, and it forced me out of this bubble. And I'll tell you, the moment that it happened for me, I was sitting alone by myself post-divorce in a bar as that lonely, and this is what I had in my head, okay? It's not what everybody else should feel, but this is just what I had in my own head. I was this lonely, divorced, old loser in a bar, drinking beers by himself. And this is the story that keeps going on in my head, and I'm by myself eating a basket of fries that I just ordered and drinking this beer and feeling horrible about who I was as a person. And I'm looking around, and I caught the eye of somebody across the bar. And in a very fleeting moment, I saw in him what I felt in myself. And it was this eye-opening experience that I realized, why am I afraid of meeting people and talking to people and selling things to people? And I'm all up in my head when other people are experiencing the exact same thing. Everywhere I looked from that moment forward, all I could see in other people was their own negative self-dialogue, that thing that they're on a loop in their head. It was everywhere. Everywhere I looked, this is what people were going through. And I was like, it's not about, you're not alone in this whole thing. It had nothing to do with that. The realization was, man, if everybody else is stuck up in their head, then I'm kind of invisible. I kind of don't matter. I kind of don't have to worry about all of these ideas that I was making up in my head. I was perceiving myself from somebody else's perspective and inserting what I thought they thought about me. And so this is the epiphany that I had in all of that was, you're not who you think you are, and you're not who I think you are. You are who you think I think you are. And that's crazy. You might want to play that back a few times just to kind of get your mind around it. But the idea that I was thinking on behalf of other people that I was a loser, like, why am I doing that? It's me in my own head. Why am I doing these things? And so I went through this new era of becoming a friend of myself again. And one of the lessons that I learned from one of the books that I picked up, I think this was Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life. And one of those is treat yourself as if you're somebody worth respecting. And so, or worth caring for is what it is. So I started caring for myself. I started eating healthy. I started getting rid of the vices that weren't in alignment with who I was. I was a hardcore alcoholic, shout out the music business. And I stopped drinking. And it wasn't because I went through some 12-step AA thing. It was because it just wasn't in alignment with who I saw myself to be anymore. I started realizing that I wanted to show up differently in the world. And I wanted to be in service of that guy, that reflection, the guy who I saw myself in. I was like, how do I find more people like that? And the cool thing about the superpower of being invisible is it allows you to move amongst the people without worrying about all of that judgment, without being hurt by anybody. You become bulletproof. And then when you are able to reach out to somebody and have a conversation with them, the really cool thing that I figured out was, how do I get them out of that place in their own head and just come out here into the real world with me, and let's explore, let's have a look around, let's see what things are like. And then in doing that, I was able to enroll them into new beliefs and new ideas. And so I wanted to kind of coach people and guide people and show people all of this stuff. And I haven't fully lived that, but that piece right there is what allowed me to go through the world and become a servant to anybody that I met. And there's this weird thing that happens when you shift gears from trying to get yours, right? I got to get mine. I got to take. And I get that, right? The hustle mentality. Just go out there and get yours. But the magic happened when I shifted into, hey, how can I give? How can I help people? And I'll illustrate this in a really good story. Me and my girlfriend, she worked at Salvation Army at the time. And if you're familiar with Salvation Army, around Christmas time, they have volunteers that kind of go out into public places like the mall or a hockey game or an event, and they get to jingle the bells. And they have a little thing beside them that people will stop and put change into. And so she got offered to fill a spot at a hockey game. And I was like, yeah, let's go do it. That'd be really fun while we can still be at the hockey game and kind of get free tickets to a hockey game. So that was the selfish side of me, but also like, yeah, I'd love to volunteer and do some good in the world. And so what we did, we got dressed up. I have this suit that's like super Christmassy, and she had little Santa's helper type scenario with the hat and all that. And so we got all dressed up, and we go to the game and we start jingling the bells. And you wouldn't be surprised to learn that when you're in that position, when you're on that side of the lens, it's really interesting to watch how everybody does everything they can to avoid you. They are averting their eyes, and they're trying to, doing their best to avoid you because they don't want that awkward exchange of like, oh, I don't want to give change to something I don't believe in, or whatever it is that people are going through in their minds. They just don't want to have that engagement. Now they gave me this rule that if somebody donates any change, then there's a bucket that you get of candy canes. They're the little 25-cent or 5-cent candy canes. You can hand out a candy cane anytime somebody donates something. And at first I was like, okay, yeah, but nobody's donating, so I can't really hand these candy canes out. And I was like, this is boring. I need to do something. I'm gonna break the rules here. I'm gonna just grab a handful of these candy canes. I'm gonna start handing them out. So anybody that would give me the time of day, hey, here you go, little kids, and anybody that would give me a smile, I handed them a candy cane. And the thing that I discovered was the more giving I did, 5 to 8 steps later, somebody's digging through their pocket looking for change to come back. Or the kid that I gave that candy cane to is like, Mom, Dad, look what I got. Oh, and this law of reciprocity kicks in, and they start digging through their pocket and give their child some change to come back and run back and feel good about that exchange. So that's the epitome of the lesson that I learned, was you have to be a giver if you want to be taken care of. And I think that is the epitome of why I ended up being the accidental CEO of the Madhouse Collective. I was looking for opportunities, and I'm scrolling through social media, and I came across a video of our fearless leader Matthew talking about this initiative that he was planning, and he needed all of these people. And it just so happened that in that list of things, there were some transferable skills that I have figured out along the way that I could contribute to this crazy idea, so crazy that even at times, sometimes I thought, there's no way that this is even possible. But I'll buy it. I'm in. Let me see what I can do. So we get on a call. In spite of me and Matthew tried probably at least a half a dozen times to have a conversation, and there was always just one thing or another that came up that didn't allow us to. The universe was really making it challenging for us to come together to make something happen. And so back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and finally we get on a call, and the chemistry was just automatically there. He's a very charismatic individual, and there's a lot of energy that pours out of him. He is a conduit, I think, for this positivity. And I tried to kind of share with him this story that after he shared with me the whole vision, the thing that he was working on, the thing that Madhouse Collective is kind of growing into, I said, well, you know what, man, this is really crazy. My partner, when we first started this whole Seven Tree Media thing, he read a book called Rocket Fuel. And if you haven't read it, 100% recommend you read it. It'll help you find your place in this world. But I'll give you the Coles notes of it. And there's 2 types of people in the business world. One type of person is a visionary, and God or the universe or whoever has gifted that person with vision, this idea, really grand things, and it just flows through them, and they're always trying to work on like the next coolest thing, and they're always really excited about whatever that thing is, but that thing never really comes to life, and it always seems to just fizzle out. And then there is the other type of person who kind of goes through the world, who is very robotic or very systematic in the way that they look at things. And I had to do that on my own, as you've heard through some of my stories here. And what they do is they bring these crazy harebrained schemes to life. They take these big visions and they organize them and they structure them, and then they put them through the ringer and they figure out how to make them come to life, and then they find the people, enlist the people, put the people into their positions to do the things that they're meant to do. And so I shared that with Matthew, and I said, hey man, I really see myself as an integrator, somebody who can take those big ideas and make them real. And if that's somebody that you're looking for, what do you need? Where are you at? What can I do to pitch in? And so he gave me a couple ideas, and I went to work, and he needed a contract, and he needed this thing, and he needed that thing. And so I just start making plans. I start putting this thing together, putting that thing together, putting this thing together. And all of it was just because I was like, dude, I'm in. Whatever this thing is, I'm sure at some point we'll get what we need out of it. But I get what it's like to be at the ground floor of a startup, and I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm just going to be giving of myself to this whole thing. And that was the birth of my relationship with Matthew and with the Madhouse Collective. And now that was about 3 or 4 months ago. And in 3 or 4 months, we've been able to successfully glue together at least 6 or 7 different initiatives, from creative services all the way to meal planning, meal kits, to events, to construction and renovations. There's all these like really cool things, and all of it is all in service of changing the way that we serve each other and compensate each other. And so the premise that I was sold on was there's going to be this resort or this retreat or this compound that is going to be the facility that we can feed and house creative people who don't yet have what they need to be able to do their creative things for the people who actually need it in the world. Like businesses who need marketing, who need advertising, who need writing, who need videography or sound design or whatever it is that they need. And so we're going to take these creatives and we're going to take away their biggest stress and problem, which is a place to live and food to eat so that they can be creative. And we're going to connect them with the businesses that need them. And so creatives turn into chefs who can help with the meal kits and people who are in trades who can do renovations because we needed some help with the retreats and the resorts and the things that we were working on. And then, well, the retreats and the resorts also need practitioners of alternative health and medicine and to be able to serve corporate people who have achieved great things in their lives but don't yet have a purpose or feel fulfilled in the work that they're doing. And so to help them kind of find their place. And so there's all of these things that we've managed to be able to glue together in a very short period of time and raise funding for it and get people on board. And so that's what got me here, and that's how I landed at the doorstep of Madhouse Collective and how I accidentally became the CEO and how I've accidentally stumbled through all of these experiences in my life to kind of come to this place now where I'm able to serve people and I'm taken care of now and I don't have to worry about my stuff, and that gives me the freedom to be able to help other people who are worried about their stuff not worry about their stuff. And that has become an integral part of what I want to do to give back to the world. And it's not even about giving back to the world so much as it is that has become my purpose in this world, is to be giving, to find something that I can be good at and then to help people with it. And I hope that in all of this, that's the motivation, that's the inspiration that you get from the story, is that if you're out there and you're doing something and you're really good at that thing, there are people that need your help. And if you can't find those people, come to Madhouse. Madhouse is going to help you find those people. I think that's the end of my story.
Wow, that was so... I don't know if you realized, like, I was here the whole time, just sitting there, just watching on my phone.
Yeah.
That was the most impressive thing I have ever seen.
I feel bad because I kind of jumped around a few ideas and I'm like, I'm struggling here.
No.
But let me bring it back. Let me bring it back. But
I'm in editing, like, I'm
can you work with that?
Dude,